Bonjour! Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Fasten up your seatbelt and enjoy this journey into Muse World with Lamia Norbert.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a new episode of Muse World. Today, I have a returning guest, a very important guest, because he is the one who helped me to start recording, with videos and everything, for you to not only listen to audios, but also see us in person. So, if you've listened from the beginning, you would know whose guest today is with us. We have Fabio with us.
Hi, Mia.
How are you?
Very good.
Welcome back.
Thank you for having me again.
I'm so happy to have you again. New
So
setup.
New setup.
New setup.
Indeed.
You like it?
1 year later.
1 year later.
Seems like a lot of things have changed.
I know. So I remember it was the first time recording. I was so anxious. I'm not gonna lie. It was the first time having lights and cameras watching us and recording with someone. That was a first time as well. But Fabio, how have you been since last time we recorded?
I've been very well. Thank you for asking. And if I can start by telling you that as it's been 1 year, looking at how far you've come from that first episode with cameras around you and lights to now, I obviously have been following the journey and listening to many of the episodes. And as you know, I'm a big fan. So I'm very, very happy to have this conversation with you today.
Thank you so much. It really means a lot. So, Fabio, from our last conversation, and obviously from me knowing you very well, we talked about you traveling. You traveled a lot. You went to, right after our episode, you mentioned you went to New York. We met in Sri Lanka. And then where did we go again? Where did you go again? You traveled a lot. Tell me more about your travels, because I lost track.
Yeah, plenty of places. I consider myself a very lucky and privileged person to be able to travel as much as I do. Obviously, traveling is one of the things that really keeps me alive, and it's one of my absolute passions. So I try to do as much traveling as possible. I think I was just back from Georgia when we were recording last year. And,
Yes.
And I was about to head to New York. And now, again, I just been in Georgia last week, and I'm back. And I've started the year traveling to Thailand, spent 2 weeks for the beginning of the year. So the new year is starting exactly as when we last met at the beginning of the previous year.
I love it. Before we dig into your travels, because obviously you've seen a lot of different places since the last time we spoke, which I would love to dig into a little bit more. However, tell me, how did life change from when we recorded to now?
Well,
give us an update.
I think it's a quite considerable change.
Okay.
Particularly for the way I've been living before this last year. Obviously, I think we touched upon the fact that I had just resigned from my previous role when we met last year. Yeah. And that allowed me to obviously have a lot of free time on hand. I think often we speak about taking risks whenever we refer to business. And perhaps we don't speak about taking risks as much for your personal life.
Yep.
And for the first time, I allowed myself, due to some things that happened in my life, to take some risks and just enjoy a little bit of a slower life and take some time off and just do what I love the most, which is to travel. And that allowed me to just, I think I've been working only 100 days over the past year.
That's the dream.
And that allowed me, as you can imagine, to be traveling quite a lot.
Yes.
And as I mentioned, I've been in many places, but it's not really about the place as much as who are you traveling with and what's the reason for the travel. And I've been fortunate to just, create moments that are going to be forever in my mind. And this is what I love about traveling, sharing a moment with someone that becomes something so unique that you keep referring back to whenever you are traveling with someone else, whenever you are seeing that person again. And this is what makes traveling so special for me, apart from obviously interacting with the different cultures, getting to learn something else, looking at a different perspective that you might not have on your own.
Of course.
And this is why I feel very privileged for all these travels.
I can imagine. I mean, listen, if I think about it, my trip to Sri Lanka started a bit of a disaster. Through whoever listened to my episode or my stories have followed it. But despite that, I still had the best time, and that was because we were all together. We had an incredible. I mean, you guys stayed longer, obviously, but I had an incredible time with you guys. It was beautiful, and it will be a memory that will forever stay in our heart, you know.
Yeah, 100%. Same for me. I mean, I often think about the fact that we were 9-10 people pretty much randomly without really organizing it.
Yes.
And I was the only one that had met all these people before in my life through Mulai.
Yes.
And then being there for a month in Sri Lanka and feeling like at home in a way, because, you know, there was your crowd around you living this kind of different experiences.
Of course.
Felt so special. And that was the start pretty much of this incredible journey that has been the last 12 months.
I love it. Now, let's dig a little bit about those travels, okay? What I want to know, obviously, all the trips were very different. They're not the same. Once you go to a city like New York, and then you go to an island life to Sri Lanka, and then you go to another island life like Thailand. So you've been going to different kind of, obviously, countries. You're stepping outside of your comfort zone, right? So how do you feel?
I feel great. Honestly, there is nothing I like as much as being out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
I love to be challenged. I love to be in a place that feels a little bit uncomfortable.
Okay.
Just because I know that brings out the best in me. Mm-hmm. And, you know, this is where the possibilities to grow and to find something unique are. So it was incredible. Each place obviously comes with different energies, different people, different moments where you find yourself in. You're going through different things. I personally was going through different things across all these trips. Mm-hmm. And so there are different things on your head. But the fact that, you know, in a way you can switch off from whatever you're going through and just immerse yourself into what you're living in the moment whenever you are visiting these different cities. As you say, obviously visiting New York was quite different from spending the time that we had in Sri Lanka or now that I started my year in Thailand. But I try to focus on just letting go.
Okay.
Whenever I'm in a place and I'm allowed to, and just lose myself with the person that I am, with my friends, with whomever I'm sharing that experience, and just get absorbed by the city and by the culture and by, you know, those energies that are surrounding me, to really try to be living like a local, and try to see with different points of view, you know, what each city, each step of these beautiful journeys adds up to your own luggage of experiences. And every time I come back here, which now pretty much feels like going back home, you know,
of course.
After 7 years living in Dubai, I feel so privileged. Really, yeah. I'm very grateful for the possibility of, you know, creating intentionally all these trips, because obviously, if you don't have a job and you have a lot of free time, you can spend this time the way you want, and choosing to do so by sharing time with your friends or with your partner and the people that really are important to you. Like, for instance, this year I started in Thailand with all my family. My sisters were in Phuket for a bartender course. They were studying at the EPS. And so I took advantage this summer when I heard the news that they were going there. I took advantage to tell my parents, hey, you know, by the way, Lawrence are going to be there. So why don't we organize this trip all together? And eventually we managed to do that. And then I had my cousin joining, and Asma surprised me and came as well.
Yes,
and those are just incredible memories, you know, that I will carry forever with me. And this is why I keep doing it. And I want to keep doing that.
I swear it's a blessing, to be honest, to be able to do that, because I truly believe that for my personal experiences, traveling was the biggest way for me to learn about life, because you go through different cultures, you go through different lifestyle, and then you realize, okay, like you mentioned, you're privileged to have the life that you have, but you make incredible memories that will forever stay and mark your life till the end, you know? Now, talk me through a little bit more about cultures. Talk to me about cultures. How was it when you first, I would say, went to a country and saw a different culture to yours? How did you approach it? And along the line, tell me which culture impacted you the most.
When you ask that question, the first places that come to mind for both ends of the questions are certainly the first time that I left when I was 17 and I moved to London.
Yeah.
And, coming from the Amalfi Coast, moving to London, back at home, I'm used to open the window and look at an incredible scenery that is one of the most beautiful places in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So compare that to moving to London and living in a flat in King's Cross and, opening the window and looking at the London weather and people going really fast. That was definitely a moment where I had to adapt, where I stopped and reflect. And for the first time when I went back home, I felt like, oh, wow, I come from this place. How lucky am I that I come from this place,
Of course.
And another moment that came to mind is also when I moved to Mauritius, your fellow Mauritius.
Yes,
Yeah, that was another moment of adaptation, because obviously it was the first time in my life where I moved to an island.
Okay.
And that is where I felt a big cultural change, because obviously I was working in luxury hotels. And so I was living one part of that island life. However, around me, there were people that, were not wearing shoes.
Yeah.
And they were not as privileged. So obviously, every time I travel, there's also this observation of where can I go and sit to just look around, and see the different kind of people that are surrounding me during that experience, people that perhaps are living there, or other expats or other tourists. And what I love to do is to really engage with this kind of people to understand what brings you here, and what do you feel like, and how different it is from where you come from, or from where you decided to live. And obviously, having traveled so much, you then start to relate to a lot of the things that people can tell you. And so many beautiful friendship that I have started through travels like that.
I agree. And I think part of it is, obviously, you've got to be open to these cultures. That's one thing I always say. For example, for people who wants to go to Madagascar, I say it's a beautiful island, but you have to be open-minded with the things that you see, because if for certain people who are used to luxury, for places to be clean and all of this, you'd be surprised that it's not the case back home. But yet, when you meet the people, when you are embarked in that culture, you realize the beauty of the little things.
100%. I think you are absolutely right. And by nature, as you know, I'm someone that is quite open.
Yeah.
And I always adapt to the situation that I'm in. I think it's one of the biggest advantages that I have, and that enables me to live such incredible journeys every time I travel. Because as you say, not many things are going to be like you expect them to be, potentially. I am the kind of person that try to keep the expectation very minimal. So to be always surprised. And it keeps happening through the people, just because, as I said, different kind of perspective, things that might challenge you and stretch you towards something that you might not be comfortable with. But for that exact reason, just reflecting on it and trying to absorb it, particularly when you travel and you spend more time in a place, so you're able to really sort of become a local within that time that you're just traveling there, allows you to take in,
of course,
this kind of different ways of looking at things.
Yeah.
And this feels incredible. But without being open, you wouldn't be able to enjoy these experiences as much. And I'm pretty happy because I tend to share these experiences with people. I'm not the kind of person that necessarily travels alone, because I want to look back at those memories and speak with someone that lived them with me, just to recall other things that perhaps I don't recall in, I don't know, 20 years time.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing is that I'm blessed to have people around me that are as open and interested in exploring. And so this just gives the setup for a perfect experience.
I can imagine. And I want to know, obviously, you mentioned London, you mentioned Mauritius. Which culture do you think, or which country you think has marked you the most?
That's a great question. Well, as an European and, coming from a very special place like Ravello in the Amalfi Coast, I think it's difficult to pick one because, as I said, they are all coming at different stages, right?
Yeah.
So traveling now, obviously, I look at things and I do things in a way that is very, very different from compared to 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so it's difficult to decide a place. However, as I was younger and obviously the changes were probably bigger, I would tell you that London really sparked the beginning of all these journeys in a way. And, it was the first time that I was moving from somewhere that is quite slow paced to someone that is the exact opposite, and fitting into that fast paced life and loving it started to change certain things in me, starting to make me, want to have different ambition and wanting to go and try things that perhaps people would tell you, oh, you don't have the qualifications to do that or the competencies, and just ignore that and just, keeping trying. That resilience that comes with travel, I think that's one of the things that I've got from traveling so much across my life. Not being afraid of someone telling you no, not taking someone that turns you down as a negative thing, but just as an objection, which obviously, having worked in sales for a long time in my life, is also something that comes natural to embrace and transform that into the opportunity to find out something else. So I'm a big believer in communication. And obviously, communicating during travels is something that is the most fascinating aspect for me, because you are most likely encountering different cultures that speak a different language, and being lucky enough to speak many of the languages where potentially you're going to find the people, and trying to really understand and put them at ease so that they can, express themselves in the best way. This was very much the case in Mauritius, perhaps. That was such a cultural change. And through a little bit of French and learning a few Creole words, getting closer to these people that would just show you a completely different way of life compared to, what I was used to until then. And then taking that with me, making it, another tool that it's a sort of a lesson that you can look back whenever you're growing and going through something and reflecting on it and thinking, this comes from there. Now I'm much more equipped at doing this, looking back and realizing, this is the outcome of that choice and of that situation that I was living in, and now is ingrained in me in this way, and it allows me to do this kind of things, which is, again, one of the privilege of being able to, melting with all these cultures.
I love that. It's beautiful. And I think, obviously, as you mentioned, Mauritius is one of the places where there's so many culture in one island that you're already absorbed with a lot of cultures when it's so diversified. But it's beautiful that you mentioned that, because I think that obviously being surrounded with cultural diversity, it helps you to grow a lot. So, which helps us to move slowly into the next part of what I want to discuss with you, is obviously from last year when we've discussed, we were already talking about personal growth, right? So obviously another year has passed and a lot of things have happened and changed in many aspects in your life. Talk to me a bit about your life changes, growth that has happened over the past year.
I'm super happy because, I'm the kind of person that really makes it a priority to try to show up in a better way every single day, not knowing necessarily what showing up in a better way means, but just trying to figuring it out.
Of course.
And trying to feel happy, my gratitude is incredible just for very simple things, for the fact that we live in a city like this, which going back to the cultures, look how much it helps us,
of course,
to be able to relate to so many different people, to speak so many different languages in a place that is mainly lived by expats. It makes things easier. And the last year has been incredible, has been probably the most incredible year of my life. If you ask me, since 2020, I've been saying that every year has been better. And this is because I try very intentionally to make it so.
Okay.
I just am not willing to let things go the way they're going, just because, sometimes you get a job, you get comfortable in your job, you get through a certain trajectory. And if you're not thinking intentionally of all the aspects, you get caught up in one, which for expat living in Dubai might be working and career. And so you get so caught up in that then you sort of let down other aspects of your life. But I have some priorities that are, revolving around health, around relationships, around experiences. And obviously I try to live moments year by year that are bringing up, those priorities in my life, so that at the end of it, I can just sit and reflect and feel like, okay, compared to last year in this bucket, we did all these new things. And this is how I feel about it. And then keep doing that with each of these different buckets that are important to me. This is something where a lot of things have changed during the past year. Obviously, starting with a big one, I said relationships are a big part of my life.
Yes.
And, right after having this conversation with you, 1 year ago, something beautiful happened, which was that Asma, my partner, had listened to the conversation. And funny enough, as soon as I reached New York, she was the first one to reach out to me and text me and tell me that she had listened to our conversation, and that we started a conversation through there. And I asked her if she wanted to get to know me better. And from there, now it's almost 1 year that we've been dating. Yes. And obviously that's a big change, which brought us to live incredible things, because obviously we've been traveling together in so many different places, and that definitely makes you feel like the change of times. And the fact that you're growing,
of course.
And dealing with people. One of the biggest realization that I had throughout the last year is the fact that you spend a lot of time to figure out who you are, and what you want, and what makes you happy, and why, and how do you want to get to spend your time. And then when you decide to have a relationship with a partner that is a romantic relationship, then you have to start to figure out all these things for the other person, or you need to understand how the other person spent time to figure out all these things.
Of course.
And it's a beautiful journey. It's not always linear. There are ups and downs, but that's life.
100%.
And so navigating it just allows you to hold yourself accountable, understand how others are holding you accountable. And the results are incredible, because ultimately you develop so many new things about yourself. You realize things about you that perhaps you don't always see.
Yes.
But it doesn't have to be just in a romantic relationship. Even with your friends. I am privileged enough to have friends that are friends of mine since I was basically born. I have some of my closest friends with whom I just traveled now to Georgia. We're born 4 days apart.
Yeah.
And
wow. Okay.
Since we were 2 or 3 months old, we basically spent our childhood together, and then adolescence. And then we started traveling and we got apart. And so obviously we've been living different lives. We've been seeing different things, and then coming back together and sharing those moments, sharing those ideas that we have, those opinions about the world we live in, and understanding the differences and making treasure out of what you hear. It's, for me, one of the most exciting things that happen.
That's beautiful. That's truly beautiful. And for me, what I'm hearing from my end is someone who takes risk and we jump for it. Well, let's try. Let's give it a shot. See what happens, you know? But sometimes, obviously, sometimes you have, when you jump, you have beautiful scenic view and it's amazing and you have amazing moment. But sometimes you have certain challenge that comes along the way. Sometimes the wind is a little bit too windy, you know what I mean? I know that you are so positive, and that is something that I always admired you for. And I always asked you this: how do you stay positive despite everything that happens? Because, you know, it's very easy to sit down and be like, this is happening to me. X is happening to me. How do I? Life is hard. Life is miserable, blah, blah, blah. But you are able to just switch that button and it's just a switch. And you're able to be like, okay, fine, it's not going like I want it to go, but yet we're going to navigate this. So if I could ask you, okay, Fabio, give me your guide of how to see life through your eyes.
Wow.
Let's say if I want a quick summary of how do I navigate challenges, or how do I go about, obviously, like you say, even when you travel, I'm pretty sure sometimes certain thing doesn't go as per plan and you're like, okay, I did not plan that. But anyway, we roll. You know what I mean? Someone else would have given up and be like, no, you know, I'm going to go back to Dubai. I'm going back home. Just, you know, I don't want to go ahead. But you decide to take it in another way and take these challenges in another way. And I believe it's the same with relationship, career, everything. So give us your guide. Give us your tools.
Thank you for asking that question. I think it's beautiful to be able to share that. And by all means, there are beautiful moments and beautiful sceneries as for travels, as for life. But obviously, there's balance, right? And there are equally moments that are not as beautiful. And as I said, gratitude is very big for me. And when I talk about gratitude, it really starts with little things. The fact that, you know, I opened the eyes this morning and I can take a breath and I can, you know, wake up, stand up with my own legs and going to the bathroom without anyone having to help. I often think of all the people that can't do that on their own. Mm-hmm. And this immediately makes me feel so privileged. And I think that this gives me reason to show up in the world in a way that can hopefully share this optimism that I certainly have. And it's not because I've seen necessarily all this, you know, unprivileged situation. I can't imagine what it's going to be like when I will be in that position. My father, for instance, goes every year in Africa, in Burkina Faso, for volunteering, and obviously he sees a completely different world.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to experience that sooner or later, to just, you know, try to understand, because if I'm this grateful now about all these things, what is it going to happen when I'm going to see real misery and poverty? Mm-hmm. I don't know, but definitely this comes from when I was younger. I think I've always been very independent, thanks to how my parents raised me. I've always traveled since I was 8 months old, and that definitely sparks certain things within you. So since I was a child, I was interacting with people that I had no idea who they were, but they were foreigners, just because of the network of my parents. And I think it starts from there, this idea of being attracted to that. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there are obviously moments where I feel like nothing of what I'm trying to do is working. And so I question myself like everyone else does. Yeah. But then I just stop and I remind myself of all the beautiful things that I've already lived. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I also, as I said, I don't really try to create expectation for myself. Mm-hmm. I think everything that happens in our life is meant to happen.
Of course.
And I think our decisions and action just change the course of how it is going to happen. So we can just make the story closer to how we want it to be. Mm-hmm. However, I think that, you know, we're set for certain things. And obviously there are moments where I question myself, you know, and I feel like, okay, how am I going to reach this next stage? And then I try to trust the process. I try to focus on breaking down these big things into smaller things. And the moment you break down a big question into smaller steps, automatically it becomes less impossible to tackle. And the moment that you stick to a routine, I think, and, just keeping repeating those small things that are going to make you feel a certain way, that are going to give you certain energies, then by default, the bigger thing takes care of itself. And it's certainly been the case in the last year, as I said, last time we set, I had just left, a very privileged role within one of the governments here in the UAE. And I was going towards something that was unknown. And it was the first time in my career. I've always been the kind of person that looked at career and had clear ambition, clear goals, that wanted to go up the ladder. And for the first time, I was like, what if we change that? What if we try to live into a different reality? One where there is no need to get another promotion. There is no need to get to another place. And there is just need to really sit with yourself and see, how do you feel? And it's been a profound experience. Obviously, you need to be very privileged to be able to do it. And it was the case for me. But it certainly changed everything. I do not look at some aspect of my life the same way as I used to 1 year ago. And I look at other aspects like friendships, like relationships, choosing who you're spending the time with and what are you doing while you're spending that time together in a completely different way, just because I lived it in a different way. And it made me feel how I feel now, which is very, very well.
I love that. So obviously, now you mentioned life has been different from last year, how you tackle life. How has it been different? Tell me, what is it exactly that has been different for you? I understand you mentioned friendship, you mentioned obviously relationship now. But what I want to get down to the bottom is obviously you as a man, you as your, put it like, your mantra, your philosophy, the way that you tackle life. How did that change from last year?
It changed incredibly because obviously I probably mentioned last time, I've started working when I was 13 years old in the family business of my parents. And so since I was young, I've always known what hard work and sacrifices means. Obviously, I went to school, I went to university, so I was always waking up early in the morning. If it wasn't to study, it was to go to work, right? And for the first time in your life, all of a sudden, you own your calendar. So, there's no one looking for you, and it's up to you, the choices that you make. And obviously, it sounds amazing. However, if you are not disciplined, it can quickly turn into something that is the opposite of that.
Of course.
And that was the biggest change to adapt with. Obviously, I took advantage to do all the things I love, which are, taking care of my health, taking care of my relationship, spending time, and really being present more than ever. Because, when you get caught up, when you have a job and that sort of becomes your priority, because obviously a lot of the time that we spend at our workplace, right? And so many dynamics in our life are dependent on that, right? And when you don't have that and you make your calendar, whatever you want it to be, and you fill it in with people that give you energy, with people where you can have a conversation like the one we are having and you get inspired by the conversation and you reflect. And so you go down home at night and maybe you write down something that you've learned and you resonate with that. I've always been the kind of person that loves to absorb knowledge. When I was younger, one of my aunts told me that knowledge is power. And since she told me that, I've always been reflecting on it, and it made me want to start to read books. And one of my favorite book in the first chapter says, "Do not judge, do not complain, and do not condemn."
What's the book?
It's Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And when I read that book, which then I ended up reading 3-4 times, that first chapter with that sentence really got stuck with me and made me think imagine if you never judge, no matter what you're going through, you do not allow yourself to judge, because obviously we don't have all the information.
Of course.
We might assume that we know even what friends are going through. However, without asking, this brings me back to that point of communication, why communication is so important to me. We should never assume, and oftentimes we just condemn because things are not the way we want them to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so we condemn someone, or we condemn an organization for something that happened. But again, if we look a little bit deeper, if we zoom out from the situation and we remove ourselves so that there is no ego, and we just looked at it with other perspective, with other eyes, we might often understand that there is a reason, and probably we would have made the same choice. We can end up agreeing with that reason for something that we didn't appreciate it in the first place.
Of course.
So it changed incredibly.
Okay, I can tell. So let's say, and I love I'm going to actually read this book. It was in my list, but I've never purchased it. So I'll definitely look into that. So obviously, now that you've mentioned about that, what I would love to obviously understand, let's say, obviously, I remember last time we talked about the body, soul, and mind, correct? So did that change?
No, that remains definitely a principle. I think everything we do starts from there.
Okay.
And maybe with so much free time, someone might think you have, all the time in the world to dedicate to those things that matter so much.
Yeah.
And with continuous traveling, it's not that easy as well, because you obviously go through different time zone, and you carry a little bit of jet lag and some excuses as well at times for not being 100%. But I definitely learned to forgive myself more. Before I would be the kind of person that, knowing what I know, being so obsessed with getting knowledge, I would want things to be a certain way, very methodical.
Okay.
And probably it is easier to do that when you have a routine, such as, going to your job, having clear timings, and so adding all these things around it. Then when you do not have it, so you are creating it. So what happens is that the thing that you really want to do the most is always going to get priority. So for instance, the working out and taking care of my body always remains the case.
Okay.
Like, no matter if I'm traveling, no matter where I am, this is always going to be a priority for me. But I might slack back on other aspects, like, for instance, not taking as much time to do other things that I do have in my normal routine and that I consider equally important.
Of course.
So adjustments definitely to be made. But nonetheless, I think that this is the real step towards happiness, and to be more mature, to understand that all these systems are nothing but things that are at the end created by us. Yes, we do know that eventually, there is a body of evidence that shows that there are benefits in doing certain kind of things. However, I think that if you just be, and stop doing all these things, I'm the kind of person that has been doing. But when you stop and you just remain still for a while, there are certain things within you that give you the answer to some of this question. And so it's just about being patient, which is one of the most difficult things that I could learn to do, because obviously I'm not a very patient person.
Yeah.
But improving into that part has always been incredibly revelatory for me during the last year.
Now that you say that, it's been something that has been on my mind, because obviously we've talked about, here Dubai being a very career-driven, work-driven. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of beautiful things in Dubai. You meet amazing people and all of that. But obviously it is the place where whenever you come back here, you're like, okay, go get her. Let's go. We don't stop, How can you implement that just be while balancing this? For example, let's say for me right now, I cannot not work. I still need to work to be able to make a lot of things happen. So how would you, what's the advice you would give me to be able to obviously still work, still obviously be in that, continue doing what I do, but just being a little bit more present, just being and allowing things to come to me rather than going to it. Because sometimes I realized, and in a lot of areas of my life, sometimes when you are looking too much and pushing too much towards something, it creates resistance and it doesn't come to you. But if you just like take a step back and you're like, okay, I know what I want. I'm going to do the steps to obviously make it happen. And I'm letting it coming to me, and it comes to you naturally. But what is your advice to, obviously, now that you're in Dubai again, when you come back from your beautiful trips and you're like, okay, back home, what do we do today? You know, how do you just implement that balance between obviously still being organized and doing, you know, understanding the priorities, but at the same time understanding that being present is very important to you and it's now part of your priority?
Yeah, I think it's a process. I think I've got there with all the experiences that I lived, and obviously being an expert and working in so many different places. So having to readjust all the time created this innate sense of adaptability, which I've learned to use as an incredible skill. And people, for instance, that were mentoring me or that were leading me noticed this thing and immediately used it as a strength within the organization that I was representing. And it's beautiful because, for instance, in the 100 days that I've been working during the past year, I had the opportunity to work on a very special project, which is an award ceremony that happens here in Dubai since 15 years. It was the 15th year edition. It's the Globe Soccer. So one of my biggest passion is football as an Italian, and working around an event like this, which brings you very close with so many football celebrities, was a dream come true, literally. Like I never thought that I would be having my previous role working for a government, representing a government here in the UAE. Something else comes that I had never anticipated in my life, and it allows me to work with some of the people that I watch in TV and I cheer for, you know. So, and that I think happens because you remove the idea of limits, right? I truly believe that if we allow ourselves to do not accept these limits that society wants to, you know, push you to believe you can do whatever you want. And so it becomes a choice. Every day you have the opportunity to choose how you're going to show up. So even when I work, I always choose to be myself within the environment, no matter how risky that could be. So, you know, we all have opinions, and sometimes you can be judged for your opinions. However, you're going to probably be judged regardless, right? By the way things are. So I don't really care about what people might say if I tell you how I live myself, if I tell you what I believe in and how I show up. And I consistently did that wherever I've been, in the different roles that I had. And what I've noticed is that at the beginning, I'm seen as, okay, this is probably someone younger, you know, that is full of hopes and dreams, and wants to share these kind of things. It's going to last a few months, and then he's going to adapt to the reality of things, and he's going to accept it. I've seen that on and on in my career. And instead, I've just decided not to accept that and to continuously let people know around me, no matter if they cared or not, why I made the choices that I've made it in terms of health, in terms of work, different kind of things. You know, what I've noticed is that these people were inspired, and they wanted to adapt the same routine in certain things, you know. And probably I'm a little bit obsessed because obviously I tend to go to the extreme in things, or before at least. This year, I used to go to the extreme in all the things that are really important to me. I want to nail it because I have that kind of personality. And perhaps people wouldn't go to that extreme, but they would take one thing that they've seen and they want to start to implement it. And now I have some of my beautiful friendships with people that I used to work with that looked at some of the things that I was doing, and now those are part of their life. And there is nothing that gives me such joy, you know, to have a catch up with a friend that I don't see as often as I used to when we were working together, and hear that he's doing some things in his life because he's reminded by how back then I was always preaching about it for one way or another. Obviously, that comes with having to walk the talk all the time,
of course.
right? And so if you're doing something, and in one way, it's another aspect of holding yourself accountable. I think that I hold myself accountable through the things that I recommend the people I love, because I genuinely care about them, and this makes me, stick with certain habits.
I love that. And to be fair, I've learned a lot through even like watching you, and even like the little things that when you talk to me, and whenever I remember there was one time I approached you and I was telling you I'm scared, and you just told me it was such a simple like phrase and it's sentence, and I was like, he's actually right. It's like, it's just a feeling, it's just an emotion, it will go. And I was like, he's right. I'm letting an emotion consume so much out of me when it's just an emotion.
100%. And I keep seeing that in so many of the people I love. And eventually it happens to me as well. When we get so caught up with a feeling, with something that for some reason is able to take off everything else and cloud our view, and all of a sudden, we don't know anymore what we want, how we do it. If you just stop for a second and you put whatever feeling in a bubble and you let it go just for a moment, you imagine a different reality, you allow yourself to have that, then you realize that it's a matter of a second and you can have it. And I think a big part of getting there is also, obviously I've mentioned Mulai, and I think that your audience is very well
Mulai,
aware.
I will ask him to sponsor my podcast.
Yeah, definitely. I think everyone is very well aware. So, over the last year, having so much free time, obviously I've spent so much time with Ian and facilitating in our beautiful community, and meeting incredible people that are not afraid of being themselves, of sharing their story on daily basis, of sharing their fear, of sharing their struggle. It's something that, first of all, lets you realize how much you can relate with these people.
100%.
And that feeling of I relate with you creates an immediate bond, a very strong, genuine connection, which is in our nature. We crave that as humans. And on top of that, the other side of it is that you hear something that is so far off from anything you've ever lived, that can be positive or negative. If it's positive, it makes you want to say, how did you get there?
Yeah.
I want to know, like, teach me. And so you are in that, feeling of inspiration, and you want to get it. And if it's negative, you're like, oh my God, I can't even imagine going through that. So you realize once again how lucky you are.
100%.
And I think this is a big part of getting to that, way of living.
Yeah, I agree. And I'd say, obviously, I can share what you're telling about Mulai, because obviously when we first recorded, I was still like just a member at Mulai, coming for my rituals and going every Sunday, making it a priority to go and do my breath work and my ass bath, meeting everyone. It was like catching up with everyone, like, hey, how was your week, and kind of vibe. And then obviously after having Ian on the podcast, I kindly asked him to help me to help you guys facilitate, because there is such a beauty around facilitating. It's being able to help a lot of people, because we both know how Mulai impacted our life, and in the positive way, how it helped us in many things, in opportunities, in relationships, in friendship, in our mental health, in different areas of our life, and stepping up and just being here present and just being able to help and be there for people. It's crazy how much you learn through this journey, being on the other side of the spectrum and being there and listening, being just stop talking, but listening to people, understanding what they're saying. And then obviously you're here to support them and all of that. But then you go back home, like you were saying, you break down from everything that you've learned and everything you can see. And you kind of try to understand how it somehow applied to your life, or like you say, the positive and the negative, how crazy it is. It's mind-blowing, and that is something that I truly enjoy. It's like you said, it's a privilege for me to be able to be part of this community, be by your side when you are present, when Ian is here, and when I'm able to make it to the session, and just be able to be like a big family for everyone.
100%. Yeah, like you said, for me as well, that moment of transitioning from just being part of the community and being part of it, watching things unfold, having to go through the process, learning, asking questions, to then naturally just by being so curious, attracting interest in the people around that are there to facilitate. And all of a sudden they're asking you questions, and they're being inspired by what you do. And so they're like just naturally allowing you to share that story. Because over time, when you look at what consistency does, which is the most difficult thing to reach, you see this big change, this transformation. And I think it has been today the biggest privilege of my life to have people coming to me and telling me, you changed my life, or you helped me so much with whatever you told me going through whatever I was going through, because I would have never imagined that I could be able of doing that just with listening and then sharing whatever I've seen, that could relate to that situation. So yeah, that's definitely a big part of all these changes as well.
Well, I wish I could stay longer with you. I feel like we have so much to catch up on, but obviously we're running out of time. But before I close the episode and I go into I have to introduce you some new traditions I've implemented since you last time came on the podcast. But thank you for sharing your beautiful journey. It's incredible to see how the career-driven man that you are learned to finally let go and enjoy life, and appreciate life. What do you have planned for 2025?
I have a lot of plans, as always. And as you can imagine, plan number one is to keep traveling.
Yes.
All the time I can.
Yeah.
I've started fairly well with 2 weeks in Thailand, a week in Georgia, and beautiful memories with family, my partner, my friends. I've figured there is going to be much more traveling happening. But at the same time, I think I'm going to go back to some routine in a way, probably going back to having a fixed role that allows me to build back the finances to allow myself to experience all of this all over again. And the biggest focus for me is really the relationship that I have with Asma, the relationship that I have with my friend. We're in that phase of life where my friends are starting to have babies, getting married.
I know.
I'm gonna turn 30 next year, and often that decade is considered one of the most important decades. And I'm looking forward, obviously, to experience everything. The focus always remains myself first, because in order to pour into others people's cup, I need to be whole. And I want to continue to exercise. One of the biggest goals I have is to get in the best shape of my life by the time I turn 30, which is a goal that I had. I do give myself some bigger goal. For instance, I think I was 18 or 19 when I decided that I would look back every 5 years and I wanted to be in a better shape physically from where I was. And that doesn't just mean, on one dynamic, like let's say strength, but no, I want to be whole. So last year, I've started playing football again, which was something that wasn't happening since many years. And the joy that it gave me is incredible. I could never imagine that just going back to kick a ball and be with friends on a pitch would make me this happy. So that's part of it. I'm very excited, honestly, and I try to do my best not to get so caught up into the excitement that then I end up missing the beautiful things that are happening on every single day. So I try to remain, my goal is to remain as present as I can with every single interactions that I have, with everything that is happening, in order to make that, the bridge towards the big things. So transforming that presence into the key towards unlocking things for the year and for the years to come.
I love that.
That's the goal.
I love that. Well, I wish you the best.
Thank you.
Hopefully I'll see you again on Muse World 1 year later.
You will.
Well, we need to keep doing this. I like it because people don't realize how much life can change in 1 year, and how much beautiful things you can learn. And
you know what I think about that? It's something that I've learned and I've heard probably through a podcast, is like we often put so much pressure for the things that we need to accomplish in small period of times.
Yeah.
Like in a week, in a month, in a year. And we forget completely to zoom out for a second and to think of what we can accomplish in a period like 5 years, 3 years, 10 years. And when you stop and reflect on that, and you make a plan not based on a month, which obviously is very much in line with the instant gratification and this immediate, change radically everything all of a sudden and transform, I don't know, your diet or your routine. Whereas if you break that change, that transformation that you are aspiring to into a longer period, you automatically set yourself for success because it becomes realistic.
Yeah. And
people get frustrated with watching smaller improvements. However, as long as you're improving 1% every day, it can be a tiny little thing. By the end of the year, it sums up, I think, to 40+%.
Yep.
And that is almost a halfway better than what you were the previous year. So if people would just focus more on the smaller things to get better, rather than, having this massive brings. So again, breaking down things into smaller steps, I think this is really the key to consistency, which ultimately becomes, the ultimate reward.
I love that. And it's so true. It's so true. I love that. So, are you ready?
I am.
You remember the rapid fire questions?
I do.
But we don't have that now. I mean,
Right.
We do have it, but we have something else before. We have the what ifs.
What ifs?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm still testing it, so there's not as much question as the rapid fire questions, but I like it. I've been enjoying it so far, so I hope you enjoy them. Ready?
Definitely.
What if the biggest challenge you face wasn't actually a setback, but the key to your success?
I think it's very much true.
Okay.
I think I agree with that. How do you want me? Do you want me to develop on that?
You can develop a little bit on that if you want, because
Yeah. I definitely think that the biggest challenge that I faced so far is, as you know, going through accepting that my mom had cancer, and now she's doing amazing, and she's out of that. That was something that I didn't know how to deal with, and learning through that experience. From my perspective, from my lenses, allows me now to see challenges and to even more want to embrace challenges, to be uncomfortable, to don't know how to deal with a situation, just trusting the fact that it's okay, and that if there is the intention, we can figure out things from there.
I love that. What if your most uncomfortable travel experience was actually your most important life lesson?
I like that. I can see how that could be true. It didn't happen probably to me.
Okay. You didn't have any uncomfortable travel?
I did, definitely. I definitely had uncomfortable situations while traveling.
Okay.
But it did not yet become something that is so relevant.
Okay.
For instance, to say that it's the most important lesson.
Fair
I can
enough.
look at lessons when things went wrong during my travels.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay, perfect. What if you had never taken that leap of faith? Where do you think you'd be right now?
I would be stuck into a place that doesn't value me as much as I value myself, that doesn't recognize the worth, and leveling with people that probably do not have the same way of looking life, without judgment, but just very aware about that different. and I probably wouldn't be as happy as I am today.
Perfect. What if cultural understanding was the solution to most of the world's problem? How would you promote it?
That's a beautiful one. I would invite everyone to just consider for a moment the possibility that there is another way, without even getting into what the way is.
Okay.
But if a little bit more people would just, allow themselves to accept that there could be a different way, and to even just to play it out, to accept it, to experience it, I think that would be that would allow already so much change.
I love that so much. All right, last one. What if you could go back and give? Oh, okay. I'm repeating myself on this one, but I like this one. Based on your 1 year, experience, if you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
To be patient.
Okay.
I'm not sure I remember the answer that I gave you last time, but now it would definitely be to be patient.
Okay.
Not to run. It might have been the same answer that I gave you last time.
I'll have to check that out.
Which tells you a lot about, despite how many things have changed, how some things stay the same.
Of course.
And that is because, there is no need to run. If we would just be able to be absolutely present in this moment, I think that we would get so much more out of it.
Okay, perfect. I like that. And now we move to the rapid fire questions.
Oh, right.
I should get I'm going to find a way to put an intro. Rapid fire questions. All right. What's one moment in your life that you consider a turning point?
There are many.
No, one. One. Like, what, based on... Is there a turning point from last year to now?
Yes, definitely.
Go on then.
Resigning from my previous role.
Okay.
But if I would have to pick one generally in life, is to be born where I was born.
Okay. I love that. That is deep. Okay. If you could have a conversation with your future self 10 years from now, what would you ask them?
That's deep.
We're leveling up with our coffee or tea, and
we're
definitely leveling up with the rapid fire.
It's a beautiful question. Earlier this year, we started the year with attending Mind Valley.
Yes.
Here in Dubai, and it was 3 days of incredible learning with great speakers. And Marisa Pierre had us do an exercise where we would go through a meditation exercise and then imagine holding our younger version of ourselves. It could be a child or towards the adolescence phase. And that was such a profound exercise and experience for so many people in the room. I think out of 2,000 people in the audience, probably 1,900 people were crying.
I can imagine.
By the end of the exercise.
I can imagine.
And I've been thinking a lot about that. And it's a very interesting question that you ask the opposite side, to meet your future self. The thing I would want is to stay true to myself, to remain.
What would you ask them? Let's say if 39-year-old Fabio was in front of you, and what would be that question you would want to ask to reach where that 39-year-old Fabio is at the moment?
How did you do it?
You got the answers.
I would say that the question would be, how did you manage to be consistent?
Okay.
Because I think the way to crack whatever you want is consistency.
Okay.
It's just to stick to things even when they're painful, even when you don't see return on investment. And I would ask, what gave you the courage and dedication to remain consistent?
Perfect. All right.
Not knowing where that Fabio would be, obviously.
All right. What personal value or principle do you hold most dear, and how do you ensure you live by it daily?
What personal values I hold more dear?
Yes, hold most dear to you, and how do you ensure that you live by it?
Definitely the value of family and friendship,
Mm-hmm.
like having that very, very close every moment. When I wake up, I think about it, and I try to show up every day, to make the people feel that is not just, something that is happening in my reality, but it's transmuted in whatever way they feel it then in theirs. That would be a big one. And I think that the other part would be not taking myself too seriously.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll take that. 2 more and then we'll be done. So if you could instantly master one new skill, what would it be and how would you use it in your life?
Time management would probably be. Yeah.
All right. Okay. And my last one. What's the most unexpected thing you've learned about yourself in the past year?
The most unexpected. Well, it was quite unexpected that I could be this long without having to go back to that work. I'm very obsessed, as I said, with the things I do. And the fact that I managed, despite projects here and there, to be this long without craving going back into it, surprised me.
Okay.
I wouldn't lie. Yeah.
I love that. Fabio, thank you.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure once again.
It was beautiful.
One more thing. Hold on.
There are many news.
Many news. Some people, that's something I'm actually introducing today, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Because obviously I started recording with you. I know it's very small for now. All right. So what I'm planning to do, anyone that knows me by now knows how much I love Stephen Bartlett. I admire him. He inspires me. And I hope one day he could be here with us. All right. Anyhow, if you've watched Stephen Bartlett, you know he has his book with the questions that he asks his guests. But I cannot copy him because otherwise it would be too easy, So I decided this year, what is it that obviously makes me as world, And I realize it's these little quotes that I get from my guests. So what I would do is I will ask all of my guests to sign and write a quote that is reasoning. Yeah, reasoning is the word. Reasoning to that guest. I will read it out to the next guest when he comes, and then it will go on a cycle. Obviously, this is small because I didn't find my diary that I want, but there'll be a bigger diary with all of the quotes. And at the end of the year, I don't want to jinx it, but I'm working onto it. I would love to actually get enough quotes to put it in a deck and kind of share it with the world. Like, when you wake up sometimes and you have a hard day and you just need something to, give you that little bit of a boost. You just take a deck, you read your quote, and you go on with life and you take that as a lesson. Because I've always said, I've learned a lot through people. Why me as well is because I have those conversations with these people that comes on the podcast or even outside the podcast. And that's why I'm trying to get as much people on board, because I learn through every one of you, like you. I learn through you. I learn through every guest, that comes here. I learn with them. So as I will be ending, before he leaves, here right in there, he'll sign it. I have the signature of Fabio here. I will not share the signature for now, but I'll have the signature and the quote. The next guest that will be on me as well, which will be the following week, will have the opportunity to read that quote, and I'll read it out loud, and then he'll write his quote for him. All right?
Beautiful. I love the new additions.
We're trying to level up slowly but surely.
You definitely are.
So while I will end, obviously I'll hand that over to you. Thank you one more time. It's been a pleasure. Any last word before I close the episode?
It's been my pleasure, honestly, to watch your journey, 1 year after.
I know.
And it's more than 1 year after introducing videos and looking at so many of the conversation, watching the episodes with some of my dear friends, from the community, and to look at how inspiring, we can all be,
of course,
if we are just offered the opportunity to share our story, to share what we're going through. So thank you for giving
much.
me the chance to tell you my story once again, to share it with your audience, and to reflect together. And you've asked some incredible questions today. So
thank you so much.
I'll be reflecting on those.
Thank you. So guys, on that note, I'm gonna love you and leave you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.